Okay. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar this afternoon. We're going to be going through the submission process for Hort version 3.0. The agenda for today, I'll be going through some Hort version 3 resources, and then I'll be going through the Hort timeline for the transition from version 2.1 to version 3.0, as well as a fee update. I'll go through a couple of slides on the version 3 policy and just refresh on the major changes in the new technical requirements. Then I'll go into the submission changes, and so that'll include changes in the portal, and then specifically the application Excel form and the questionnaire. Lastly, I'll be going through the QPL, the qualified products list, and the changes that will be showing up on the QPL with the version 3 update. So today you have myself presenting, Aaron Feldman. I'm the Senior Technical Operations Analyst here at the DLC. I work to help manage the operations of the SSL and Hort programs. We also have on the call Casey Holland, who's a technical manager for our horticultural program, and Dave Ryan, who's one of our lead Hort reviewers, and they are going to be answering questions that you submit in the questions pane. Some quick logistics for the webinar. The slides and webinar are going to be posted on our website. If you go under news and events, you'll be able to see this shortly after the webinar. Also, all users are muted, so if you're having any technical problems, please use the chat to let us know, and we'll do our best to work those out. For the Q&A, we will be having some time at the end to go through questions live at the end of the webinar, but also please enter them throughout the webinar in the questions and answer pane. Casey and Dave will be are online waiting for your questions, and so they will answer them as they come up, and we will choose to answer some of those questions at the end of the webinar for everyone. So to start off, just to go through a couple of resources that are available during the Hort version 3 transition. This page has links to the technical requirements for version 3. There also is a guidance document for submitting product images for version 3, which is a requirement. I'll go into that in a little more detail in some further slides. There's also the fee updates, and then the version 3 release webinar that Casey led, more on the technical aspect of the version 3 policy. And as always, if you have any questions after the webinar or have specific issues that you'd like to talk to someone about, you can email us at horticulture@designlights.org, and we will do our best to respond as quickly as possible for those questions. Then I'll go, so now I'll just go into the timeline and fees. So here you can see the version 2.1 and version 3.0 timeline. You can see the start of the timeline is on March 30th, and that is the last day to submit an application as version 2.1. Starting on March 31st, only 3.0 applications can be submitted, and the new application fees go into effect. On May 31st, that's the deadline to complete 2.1 applications. So applications that have been submitted on the 30th of March or prior, they have until May 31st to complete their review. Then if we move along to next year, on February 2nd, that's the last day to submit applications to update version 2.1 products to version 3.0. And that's in preparation of the delisting date, which is March 31st of 2024. And then on that date, any products that are not qualified under version 3 will be delisted. So that time span between this February 2nd and March 31st is to allow all the 2.1 update applications to get processed as much as possible before the delisting date. Some more details on the updating process. Version 2.1 products are not automatically updated. So some action needs to be taken if you want to get your products updated to version 3. They need to be submitted in an update application. That application specifically for version 3, some of the new information are product application information, controls, and the product image. And so to get all that information for version 3, an update application needs to be submitted. And then if no action is taken, the version 2.1 products will be delisted, even if they meet the requirements for PPE. There are other requirements in version 3 that precipitate a update application. So just to go through a couple of different scenarios on applications and how they'll process through the system. So once version 3.0 is live, if you create an application on 3.31 or later, then the application is going to be treated as a version 3, and it will be processed as a version 3 application. If you've submitted an application on the 30th or earlier, so if you submitted it by the 30th, then that continues as a version 2.1 application. If you didn't submit it by the 30th, then the application will be locked and you'll need to submit a new version 3.0 application. So to reiterate, your 2.1 applications must be submitted by 3/30 by the end of this month on the 30th to process as a 2.1 application. You won't be able to submit 2.1 applications after that date. So if you've created one and you've started filling out the application Excel form and you've started uploading some files, you'll need to get that application submitted on the 30th or earlier in order for it to process as a 2.1. Also, private label applications still function similar to this scheme. When the private label agreement is signed, is sent for signature, that'll be considered the submission date. Then to go into fees a bit, along with the Hort version 3 portal launch, we are updating the fee structure for horticulture applications. Those details can be found here. Also, it was sent out in an email recently and will be on the web. Starting on the 31st, all new invoices, regardless of the application type, will follow this updated fee structure. And specifically for your applications where it's a version 2.1 to version 3.0 update and no testing is required, that'll be charged the non-performance affecting updates fee, which is $500 on that bottom right. If there is testing required, the charges will be applied as noted here. And then also just a note, there's no free fee, no free update. All version 2.1 to version 3.0 updates will incur some fee. And with that, I will move on to the policy refresher. One of the main updates in this version 3.0 policy is a new efficacy threshold. So that's your photosynthetic photon efficacy, or PPE. The new threshold for version 3.0 is 2.3 micromoles per joule. Some other updates to version 3 are product application information. And so that's trying to better characterize the different end uses or applications that your products may be applicable in. And then there's a couple different categories of controlled environment, and that's indoor greenhouse, and then within indoor it could be stacked or non-stacked. And then there's lighting scheme, the position, where it's you can have top light or intercanopy or some other specified position, such as a side light or other use cases that we have not listed here. Those are available for you to just type in the application process, and I'll go into that a little more in further slides. And then you have whether or not it's a sole source or supplemental. if that product is used in those types of environments. Lastly, there is the product image. And so every product for version 3.0 must have a representative image. And I'll also go through that in a couple more slides. There is guidance that's available on the file type, size, resolution, and then some other guidelines regarding the style, such as not having additional language on the image, and it's just an image of the product itself. One thing to note is that you can have one single product that is suitable for multiple use cases. So you could have a product that's good for both indoor and greenhouse. That's a top light and could be sole source or supplemental. All of those options will be selected for that single product and displayed on the QPL for that product. Another threshold requirement for version 3.0 is dimming. So if a product has a PPF, or photosynthetic photon flux, greater than 350 micromoles per second, then that needs to be dimmable. If you're less than that PPF threshold, it doesn't need to be dimmable, but it's part of, you're required to state if it's dimmable or not. And that applies to any product for any application scenario. So if I just go back to this slide here, you can see the different controlled environments and lighting schemes. Regardless of the control environment and lighting scheme that your product fits into, if you're over 350 micromoles per second, it must be dimmable. Also to note on this slide are the different dimming and control methods. So the dimming and control method are the protocol or methods of communication between the product and other devices or controllers. And then the connector or transmission hardware is the hardware that's integrated into the product that allows it to physically connect with or receive a signal from a controller or other device. So this slide shows some of the controllability options that are available. So as I mentioned, there's the dimming and control method designation to the product. And so there you can see a couple examples of the control type that'll be displayed on the QPL. This screenshot is showing the wired options. You can see it's starting with some 0 to 10 options there. And then there's some phase cut and dolly options a little bit lower. During the application, you will need to specify which control type is available in your product. And then we have acceptable terms listed within each of these tables. During the application review, reviewers are going to be looking at the specification sheet and any supplemental documentation to see that one of the acceptable terms listed within the policy is present to confirm that the product in fact does have that control type. So there's a similar dynamic on connectors and transmission hardware, as well as the integral control capabilities. Then another update in the version 3.0 policy is some test reporting requirements. The most significant is that the LM7919 version that standard must be followed and test reports must be tested according to that standard for Hort version 3.0. Previously, LM7908 was accepted as a testing standard for photometric testing. But moving forward for version 3, it needs to be the 19 version. The policy also has more details on all the different metrics that need to be included. If you're submitting a report for that's an LM79 SQD report, or typically done in a integrating sphere, or an LM79 PPID report, which is done in a goniometer. Additionally, the SQD and PPID images that are submitted in the portal today with version 3.0, those must be generated by the pre-submission tool, which I'll go through in the next slide here. So as I mentioned, those images must be generated by the pre-submission tool, and they are required for any new or update applications that require a new LM79 test report. So if when updating from version 2.1 to version 3.0, you do not need to provide a new LM79 test report, you do not need to provide new SQD and PPID images. So those images are just accompaniments of a test report. So to get to this pre-submission tool, if you're unfamiliar, you'll log into your DLC account. And then once you select your organization, you'll go on the left-hand side and click on Application Pre-Submission Tools. And there you'll see the Hort Pre-Submission Tool. And so you click on that and you're taken to this page where you can upload a TM33 XML file, and it'll output your SQD and PPID images. And those images will need to be uploaded into the portal for your application. There are example files on this page. So there's an example file with both SQD data and PPID data. And then there's also example files with just PPID or just SQD. As for your specific application, it's feasible that those might be on different tests. There's also a couple of helpful articles to explain what the tool is doing and why it's generating the images in the way that it does. Now I'll go through some of the submission changes for version 3.0. So starting on the 31st, all new applications will be version 3.0 applications. So on the portal, on the left-hand side, if you select one of these application types, OEM new, update, or private label new or update, all of those will be version 3.0 on the 31st. Similarly, in the center of the portal, you can start a new application there, and that will also start a version 3.0 application. To help differentiate the application types, on the portal, you'll see the version number appended to the application type. So if you're in the My Applications page, you'll see the version number appended to the end of it. And then also, if you're within an application, you'll see the version number called out specifically in the overview section. As I mentioned earlier, with version 3.0, there is a new application Excel form. I'll go into a little more details in a couple slides on exactly what's different. But it is different, and they're not compatible between versions. So if you have started a version 2.1 application, but now you want to do version 3.0, you'd either need to if you've submitted that application, you could message your reviewer and say that you'd like to cancel this, and then you would create a new application for version 3.0. And then if you're submitting a version 3.0 application, the version 2.1 application Excel form won't be accepted, and you'll get an error message stating so. These application forms will be able to be found if you go on the website under Our Work, Horticultural Lighting, and then the under Qualify Fixture sections. Then there's level 1, which is also known as the single product. So if you're just submitting one product in an application, or level 2 if you're submitting multiple products in the single application. And then lastly, there's the update listed fixtures for instructions on how to update products that are already listed. On each of those pages, there's a button at the top, which will take you to the application form section. And there will be links for both the version 2.1 application Excel forms and the version 3.0 application Excel forms. So once those are updated online, Just make sure that you're using the right form for the right application type. Now to dig into some of the changes on that form, on the first tab of that Excel, there are new columns for the product application information. So that's your controlled environment, the lighting scheme position, and the lighting scheme use case. And those are drop-down options to select the applicable answers to those questions. There is also a column for other lighting scheme position, and that's a free field for you to type in if your product has some intended position that isn't listed in the policy. For example, side light would be an option for that. And then also there are dimension columns, and that's length, width, height, and diameter. This was introduced in the horticulture program with lamps during the previous technical requirements change, but now these are required for all products. For different product types, you could use width and height, length and width, or diameter if it's a round fixture. There's also another tab on the application Excel form, and that's specifically focused on the new controllability properties within the version 3.0 policy. As a note, the first column on that tab is model number, and those model numbers must exactly match the model numbers that are on the first tab. So that first tab of reported performance table, that's taking in some information about the output of your product and electrical and photometric performance. And the second tab will be the controllability, which should reference the exact same models. And you can see here, there are 3 models listed on the reported performance table, and then those exact same ones are listed on the controllability, because all that information is needed for all products in your application. On the controllability tab, it's broken up into the different sections. So there's dimming performance, which is generally whether or not the product's dimmable, and then some of the electrical or photometric performance when dimmed. Those are just reported values, so testing is not required at a dimmed level. And then also there is sections for you to indicate which protocol is used to achieve that dimming or control. You can see in this example, there's the 0 to 10 volt options, and then there's also a 0 to 10 volt other if it's a different 0 to 10 volt control. And so on that controllability tab, there is a column for each of the control types, as well as the connector and transmission hardware and the integral control capabilities. So you would just go in and you would say yes or no to the various capabilities and features that the products have. Those are the only changes to the Excel upload. And then onto the questionnaire. Questionnaire, the largest change is that it's now in 2 different pages. So there is the product info and performance page, and that is very similar to what you have today. And then there is a products images page where you will upload images to represent your products in the application. Both of these pages will need to be completed in order to submit the application, but you could hop between the two if one day you have the images ready, but you still need some more test reports. You can fill out the images page and then go back and fill out the product info and performance page when you're ready, and the portal will save that information. But both need to be filled out completely in order to submit the application. On the products imaging page, the first thing you would see is this question here, and that's asking if you want to use one image to represent all products in your application, or if you have different images for each product. So if you have a product family with say 10 products in it, but the only difference is output or spectrum, and there's no physical differences from an image point of view, you could say yes, upload one image to represent all products in the family, and then that image will be applied to each product in the application, which would be published to the QPL. If you select no, then you will upload an image for each product in your application. Just to show what those look like, here I selected yes, and then you'd upload a representative image for all products in your application. Then if you select no, then the questionnaire will change so that there is a list of your model numbers and the image that you and an option to select a file for an image to be representative of that specific model number. I briefly touched upon this earlier, but wanted to dive a little deeper into the different types of updating from version 2.1 to version 3.0. Two main categories. So you could have your 2.1 product that meets the PPE threshold of 2.3 micromoles per joule, and there are no changes since you've qualified that product. For that scenario, you'll need to submit an update application with the version 3 application Excel form, product specification sheet, a QPL download of the products or family that you want to update. This helps the reviewer understand all the products that are involved in the update, and useful for reviewers to gain an understanding on what was done previously with that product family. Then there are the product images, safety compliance certificate, but no testing or reports are needed. So just those items. If you have a version 2.1 product that does not meet the PPE threshold, it likely means that the product will need to be updated to increase your efficacy. And when that product is updated, you would need to submit an update application that would include all the files or documentation on the left and any additional test reports. For example, your SQD PPID images, thermal tests, depending on the type of change that the products underwent to now meet the PPE threshold. So those are the main submission changes for version 3.0. I'll now go into some of the changes that will occur on the QPL. So on the QPL, there's going to be a new checkbox under technical requirements version for 3.0. And there's also going to be the product application info. That's the controlled environment and lighting scheme. Those will be within product features, which I'll go into on the next slide. There's also additions to the reported performance accordions here for the different filters. And then there's a new section for control features. For the product application information, there are the options here where you would be able to select one or more for each property, whether you want to find, depending on what types of products you're looking for. And here you are able to select multiple options if preferred. Then there's ways to sort by control features. So users of the QPL can go in and based on a specific control protocol that they're using or would like to use, they could search for products that only have those protocols, or connector or transmission hardware, and then integral control capabilities if that's what the QPL user is looking for. The other update to the QPL is going to be the product images. So that is going to show on the PLP or product listing page, which is in the background of this slide. And you can see some example images here of products that would show up on the QPL. You also can see that on the bottom of that list is just the DLC Hort logo. Any 2.1 product will have the Hort logo in place of the image. Since we don't have the image at this time, the logo will serve that purpose until that product is updated to version 3.0, when it will get an image applied. Then there's a product detail page, which will have the image at the top right, as well as the Hort logo on the, the image on the top left and the Hort logo on the top right. And then looking at the product detail page in a little more detail, there is some new properties within the product categorization. And so that's the product application information. So you'll see here, there's the controlled environment, the lighting scheme position, and the lighting scheme use case. So for this product, it's indoor non-stacked, or it could be used in a greenhouse. You can use it as a top light or a side light, and also is sole sourced. It can be used as a sole source light or a supplemental, specifically for the greenhouse application. And you can see on the lighting scheme position, the side light was that other column that I filled out earlier in the Excel. So that's how that shows up on the QPL. Then there's the product capabilities, and that'll include the new controllability properties, where it's dimming and control method to the product, and it would be the various protocols listed that the submitter specified during the application submission. There's also the controller transmission hardware, and then the integral control capabilities. Lastly, there are some minor updates in the reported photometric performance and reported electrical performance, and that's the new dimming properties that are required per the policy, and that would be the minimum wattage and output when dimmed. Lastly, for the QPL changes, the saved item download, if you are on the QPL and you click this checkbox, add to my list. Also, if I flip back, you can see on the bottom the screenshot of the PDP was saved to my list, and there you can then you can download the product in an Excel format, and that would include all the product performance information. And that would include the new version 3.0 properties starting on 3/31. So that was the summary for the QPL changes. So overall, just wanted to highlight some key points from this webinar. The Hort resources for version 3.0 can be found here, and these slides will be posted online, and we'll include in a e-blast as we get closer and closer to the version 3.0 go live date. Some key dates are that the version 2.1 product applications must be submitted by 3/30, and they have until 5/31 to be completed. So make sure to get those applications in as soon as possible, so you don't run into that deadline there. Also, version 3.1 applications can be submitted starting on the 31st, and on the 31st, only version 3.0 applications will be can be submitted. We went over some of the policy changes, such as the efficacy, the product application info, and the new controllability requirements. Then we went through the submission changes. So we talked about the new application Excel form, how it's not compatible between the two technical requirements, the updates on the first tab, reported performance table, and then the new tab for controllability, where you specify the capabilities from a control standpoint on the products. Then lastly, we went through the updates to the questionnaire. So that primarily is the image section, the image page on the questionnaire. And lastly, we went through the QPL. We had talked about the new filters, how the images will show up, and those new properties. So with that, I want to thank you for listening in for this webinar for Hort version 3.0 and how to submit applications. We're looking forward to getting your applications and for any questions that you have up until then. So now feel free. I know Casey and Dave have been answering questions throughout this webinar. So I'll take some time to answer a few of those live. So there was a question about how we can find the 3.0 Excel form. Only 2.1 is on the website. We'll be posting that in the coming days, and we'll be sure to send a e-blast out once that's available, so that you can prepare for your version 3.0 applications. There was a question on how will I be able to use the dashboard to update a product that was version 2.1 to version 3.0. So to start an update application from version 2.1 to version 3.0, you would start an update application. So that's on the left-hand side. You can navigate to update application, and there you will fill out the application Excel form and go through the submission process. Starting on the 31st, you will be able to submit applications to version 3.0. And on the application Excel form, there is a column for product ID for update applications. And there you'll be able to put in the product ID for the products that you're updating to version 3. Another question, if my products meet the efficacy threshold, why do I need to submit an update application? So the version 3.0 technical requirements includes other additions to the program beyond the efficacy threshold, such as the product application information, the controls, and the image. And an update application needs to be submitted with those details to qualify any currently listed products to version 3. There's a question, can I submit a level 2 or family application with both dimmable and non-dimmable products based on the PPF value for those products? Yes, that's true. If you have a family of products where some of the products in that family are above the 350 threshold, and you have other products that are below the 350 threshold, only the products in the family that are above the 350 need to meet the dimming requirements. There was a question about will the 3.0 policy have surveillance testing? Is it the same as regular lighting audits? So I will, and maybe Casey, if you're available, would you like to chime in on that note regarding surveillance testing?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question, and thanks everyone for attending today also. But yeah, so specifics for surveillance testing for our Hort program. There is an accompanying surveillance testing policy with DLC version 3. So starting with version 3 listings, we do have this surveillance testing policy. It's available online in the same areas as our technical requirements. I can find a link for that and put it in the answer real quickly, and we'll send it to all so it's available. But they do generally align with the same surveillance requirements that we have for our SSL program, but with metrics specific to the horticulture program and horticultural lighting.
Thank you, Casey. So just looking through the questions pane, if you have any further questions, now's a great time to ask. We are available. So let's see here. There's a question about how should I set up my testing plan for a family to optimize my application for version 3. So with Hort version 2.0, family products were accepted, so that's where you could submit a single application to qualify multiple products if they're all within the same family. There's a lot more detail on the web under that level 2 application instructions page. And so I would definitely refer to that page as it has some useful information on how to go about testing for families of for a family of products, and that depends, on the construction and the variations within your family. If you like to go through as a testing plan that you have created to make sure that you have everything available, we are very open to that, and always find that sometimes communications prior to submission help expedite the submission process. So we are available to provide that sort of resource if you have questions about how to submit your products for qualification. There's a question about if you can use your company logo instead of your Luminaire picture. The short answer is no. The pictures that go on the QPL are designed to be representative of the products that they are being associated with. So that's for users of the QPL to see what the product looks like. And the product image must be used. Now you can use one image to represent a family of products if you'd like, instead of each product having its own image. There was a question on the timeline, specifically what is the timeline for the next mandatory version update. So I'll just flip back here to that timeline page. So bear with me. And so here is the timeline again. So if you have version 2.1 products that are not updated, those products will be delisted on March 31st, 2024. So if you'd like to update those products, the update application must be submitted by February 2nd of 2024 in order for the review team and the submitter to have time to work through any questions and to get those products updated to version 3. Thank you for that question. And then we don't have, there was a follow-up to that question on the timeline about future policy updates, like a version 3.1 or version 4. We don't have any details available at this time beyond the timeline shown on this slide. Great questions. If you all want to keep them coming, we have a couple more minutes here to answer them. And I also realized that I wasn't showing the timeline slide, so you can see it now here. Give folks another minute to type in any questions that you have. There was a question specifically about the cutoff time on 3:30. That'll be the end of the day on 3:30 for submitting your version 2.1 applications. Okay, it looks like the questions have slowed to a drip. As always, you can feel free to email horticulture@designlights.org with any questions that you may have if they come up as you are preparing for version 3.0 submissions. And you can reach out to me personally as well at afelman@designlights.org. If you have any questions about the content of this webinar or how to submit your applications. I would like to thank everyone for joining, and for my esteemed colleagues, Casey and Dave, for mainly Q&A. Thank you all for joining.